Hi, I'm Holly Culhane with PAS Associates. We're an HR consulting firm based in California, getting ready to celebrate our 30th anniversary. We have been around a really long time, but that's a good thing when it comes to our clients. So today we're going to talk about care and candor, making performance appraisals work. Performance appraisals. Yeah, I said the word evaluations. It's like, oh no, they're coming. If you're the supervisor, you're like, I don't want to do all those again. If you're the employer, it's like, oh, I don't want to have that done to me again, right? We think that over and over again. So my hope is for the next few minutes and the next few segments about this topic, you'll be able to kind of change your mind about performance evaluations. We want you to give them with care. Yeah, because you want yours given with care, right? And we want you to give them candidly, with candor, so they really do know, the employees, those you're evaluating, they really know how they're doing. You don't do anybody any favors when you're not candid or honest and really evaluate people properly and fairly. So we'll work through that together, and we're going to have some objectives for our time together. The first one is to review the benefits of performance appraisals. Sometimes we need reminded of what they are. There are benefits. We know it, but sometimes the time it takes to do it, you just don't want to go there. But there are some really important benefits. Secondly, we want to list the steps to preparing for an appraisal. And yes, it's more than picking up the form and filling it out. You need to do some homework. How much appraisal preparation time do you want done on your evaluation form, right? So give the same respect to the people that work for you. And then we're going to list the elements of a successful appraisal meeting. So you're not just stuck with, okay, got the form, now what do I do? Because I've done this a million times, but looking at it a little bit differently. So our challenge today is to take a look at performance appraisals themselves, again, the benefits, but also the steps to getting there, because it's as important as the meeting itself, and then the actual time of conducting that meeting, what it means to the individual. So if I said, what are the benefits? If you were all in the room, you'd be able to say at least 4 or 5 pretty quickly. Maybe these are some you already think of. Examine the employee's progress toward their goals. Yeah, no-brainer, of course. Improve employee performance productivity. Yeah, that's a part of it. We want folks to be even better connected to what they do and want it to perform well and effectively. Identifying current or potential problems, because often there are some you haven't talked about yet. Now, you shouldn't be waiting months and months and months. You shouldn't wait till the evaluation to have that conversation, but this does give you an opportunity, and it is a benefit of performance appraisals to make sure you have that conversation fairly quickly and early on in that meeting so you can deal with those issues as well together. To improve communication between the employee and the manager, feedback's important. You know, we all know it. We just don't always take time to do it. There was a great exercise we used to do years ago in the first or second situational leadership training session that Blanchard put together. And it was a marker exercise where we had folks who went outside the room if they volunteered. We had 4 people who played the role of employee and 4 people who played the role of supervisor. They came back in one at a time, and the employees sat at their chair blindfolded, were then given 4 markers. A trash can was put about 15 feet in front of them, and the supervisor said, we need you to get all the markers in the trash can, and you can't leave your seat. You got to throw them in. The first supervisor gave no feedback, none. And you can imagine how that went. The person took the markers, blindfolded, eyes closed, and tried. And they would ask questions like, how'd I do? Was I close? Do I need to throw it differently? Are you there? But that's how they feel when we give no feedback. And that was the first scenario. The second one was giving negative feedback. Oh my gosh, you throw like a girl. I can't believe you did that. I should have had the other employee come in and do that. I cannot believe, how bad can you get at this story and think you're not even close? It was horrible. And no matter what person played the role, they always did it really well. The third was somebody giving positive feedback. So the person sitting, blindfolded, different individual, throwing, wow, great job. More throwing. Oh, you're trying so hard. Way to go. You really rock at this. All very positive, but non-specific feedback. Not good either. The fourth person was given specific and positive feedback. So as they sat blindfolded, eyes closed, and threw a marker, one of the supervisors who played that role would say, okay, oh, you were so close. Here's what you need to do. Just arch it a little bit more. Try it underhanded or try it overhanded. Or can you throw a little bit, maybe a wider circle? Or here's one that was my favorite. All those years we did this and all those years ago, this was my favorite. One supervisor said, I'm going to walk and stand behind the trash can. Just throw it in my voice and I'll talk you through it. Was that not beautiful? I mean, that was really amazing. To see a supervisor risk themselves a bit, to go, here it is, you can make this. A little higher, a little more to the right, a little more to the left, fairly consistently over, probably 10 years or so that we trained using that program. The person who got the most markers in wasn't always the positive and specific feedback person, but that person always said, I would throw markers for that supervisor all day long. Everybody else said, I just want to be finished. So you won't always have success with your people, but you want them to want to work for you, right? Because they only work for you for one of two reasons. They want to or they have to. That's it. And every time the positive, specific feedback person said, I would keep throwing markers. And typically, they had more markers in the trash can than anybody else. So feedback. You need to improve communication between the employee and the manager, always. Terribly important to do that. Strengthen relationships. Yeah, it's a relationship. It's a working relationship. It's important you work well together. So a great benefit of performance appraisals is strengthening that relationship. And then, of course, the one we can't miss, it's legal protection. It's important to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. We're making sure that we do it legally and we do it well. So benefits of performance appraisals, I think you'd agree there are a number of them. Okay, so how do you do this performance evaluation thing effectively? Well, first of all, to be effective, a performance appraisal really needs to meet certain key requirements. First, the standards and the goals for every position you're evaluating must already be set. No surprises. Usually this is done through a job description. If you were tuning in about how to hire right, you heard a little bit about that at that point in time. We talked about making sure the job description was well written in that process, but the same is true here. That's your standard. That's your measurement. If you go back and look at the job description, that is what you evaluate against. If there's a task they're performing that's not in the job description, they should know ahead of time whether or not they're being evaluated on that. So absolutely, it should be the standard and goal already set. It should also measure progress and ability against the predetermined goals. So if they're a brand new employee and they're having their 90-day evaluation, you should be looking back at what the goals were on day one. What goals did you communicate with them? What SMART goals did you share with them? And we'll talk about SMART goals later. And that should be what you're measuring. If they're an employee who had an evaluation 6 months or 12 months ago, when you finished that evaluation, there should have been goals set at that time for them to achieve. The difficulty with annual performance appraisals, which I know everybody's saying, Holly, I don't want to do them more than once a year. But the problem with that is, quick, what were you doing a year ago this time? It's hard to remember. What are my goals this whole time? So either you have to have some way to keep them refreshed and working toward that goal, or have your evaluations be shorter and more frequently. Thirdly, to be effective, it's got to be tied to the employee's job. I mentioned that with regard to the job description, but it's got to be tied back to job, not some esoteric type of thing you're kind of making up, not something subjective, but very objective in the process. So making sure you tie it right back to that. And then, of course, you've got to remain objective in the process. You've got to ask yourself how well you're doing at evaluating this performance of this individual as you are the others that you're evaluating. So be careful that you're keeping objective in the process. And then, of course, you've got to build on an employee's strengths. This is something we hear very few people say, but building on someone's strengths helps them build on a positive. The reality is you'll use this several ways. One is providing feedback on great results you're getting. For example, wow, Susie, you're doing a great job at this. You're really using your strengths to accomplish this goal. Or it could even be on giving guidance for the future. How you get where you want to get, use your strength here and build on that in this way to be able to build your future there. Or it may even be dealing with a corrective action plan. If somebody's got an area they're really struggling in, talk about what their strengths are and how they could use those strengths to correct that area of weakness. So again, some really important, effective points to remember in how you meet certain key requirements of that performance appraisal process. And then, of course, lastly, it's got to meet all the legal requirements. It's got to be valid. It's got to be fairly administered. You don't give evaluations randomly. You don't give evaluations to document something and write people up. They should all be done either at someone's anniversary time or at the same month of the year or every 6 months, but they should be done consistently. So you ask yourself, when it comes to a legal evaluation, would I require this of the star person I work with if they were in this position? Would I require this of my favorite person in this position? It helps you stay objective and keep focused and hopefully keeping that T crossed and the I dotted when it comes to the legal aspect of performance appraisals. So we've talked about the benefits of appraisals, the 6 key important elements of appraisals. Let's talk about the 3 key elements to making performance appraisals work and to work really well to serve you well and to serve the employee well. First of all, and this is where we really tend to mess up the most, prepare for that appraisal meeting. Make sure you prepare the employee. Set the date, set the time, set the place. Notify them a couple of weeks in advance. Don't just spring it on them like, hey, tomorrow at 2 we're having your evaluation. They're like, what? Give them time to think about it. You might even send an email and say, I'd like to meet with to do your evaluation the next couple of weeks. Is there a day or time that works best for you? So include them in that process and prepare properly. Once you've decided when that evaluation meeting will be, send them a written confirmation of the purpose of the meeting, as well as a reminder of the day and time, so they know the purpose is to make sure you quickly and clearly evaluate their performance annually or semi-annually. Let them know this is an ongoing process. People bring baggage with them from one employer to another, and we want to make sure the baggage they're bringing with them isn't about evaluations and carrying it over that way when it's not necessary. So give them all the information they need. You can show them the form, you can talk through the process, do everything ahead of time you can to help them be comfortable in that meeting. You also want to give them the opportunity to ask questions ahead of time. I had a friend one time who said she came in on the evaluation day and found her evaluation on her chair, just sitting there. Now, it was a great evaluation, but that wasn't the point. You mean my boss, she said, couldn't take 30 minutes to tell me how I'm doing, to walk through the evaluation with me? They didn't just mark it up and throw it my chair? Really? So take the time to show you care. We're back to that. Zig Ziglar said nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's true. Think about a customer service situation. If you go into big box store A and you say, hey, where do you find the paint here? And they say, I think it's aisle 10 or 12. You'll find it that way somewhere. But if you go into big box store B and you say, hey, where's the paint here? And they say, I'm pretty sure it's on aisle 15, but let me walk back there with you just to make sure. They walk with you, it's on aisle 15, and then they say, what color are you looking for? Kind of a greenish. Well, here's all the green options we offer, plus we can do custom paint for you too. Where would you go back to, right? They showed at Big Box B that they care enough about you to walk you there to get you what you needed. Big Box A, whatever. So the same thing's true in the evaluation process. You want people bought into working for you. You want people bought into this process, so give them a chance to ask questions early on, tell them what the process is going to be like. And make sure the employee has a copy of the goals and the appraisal form that you're going to be using at the meeting. Again, eliminate as many surprises as possible. Remember, Susie, these are the goals we set last quarter. Here's what we're going to be evaluating you against, and this is the form we'll be using since you haven't potentially been here very long to remember what the form looks like. Ask the employee to evaluate their own performance before the discussion and complete the form prior to the scheduled meeting. Now, this is something not every company does, but those who do typically find it to be of a huge benefit. In other words, when you talk with Susie about when the evaluation is going to be, you review the goals, you set a time, you'd also say, we'd like your opinion on how you think you're doing in your job. So here's the form I'll be using, and I'd like you to use the same form, almost identically or very similar to your form. We'd like you to complete that and let us know how you're doing and bring it with you to that meeting. So I won't see it ahead of time, you won't see mine ahead of time, but we can talk through it. And you'll have a chance to present those thoughts to me as we begin our meeting. That way they know they're going to have some input in that process. It's important to make sure that in the preparation process that you evaluate your own performance. Now here's one you don't hear very often. You're like, say what? Your role with that employee is to supervise and manage them effectively, right? So take a few minutes and say, how have I done? There's some great questions you can ask yourself. First one is, have you and the employee set mutually agreed upon goals? Do they know what they're being evaluated against? Have you provided regular feedback on the employee's performance so there won't be surprises? And rule number 1 with regard to evaluations, there should never, ever be a surprise. They should know and anticipate what's coming because you've had regular and consistent conversations with them about their performance. Number 3, are you aware of any obstacles that have prevented the employee from meeting their goals? If you gave Susie Smith the goal of X and she couldn't complete X because a coworker went out on a medical leave and she had to fill in for that person, have you taken that into consideration? Have you remembered that, and have you sat with her and said, please know we're not going to evaluate this goal because we know you couldn't do this and the job you were doing to help your coworker? Has the employee willingly come forward to you with any questions? You think, what's that got to do with it? Well, it has a lot to do with how open you are and how available you are to them? Have they come forward to you and said, hey, I'm not quite sure how this project works. I'd like your feedback or your input. Think about how well you've led them in that area. Has your own performance served as a role model for the employee? There's a great question. How have you done? Have you been to work on time? Have you been ethical in your behavior? Have you returned phone calls properly? Have you treated people the way you want to be treated? And then if any of your goals that affect the employee have changed, have you told them? You would not believe how often we hear from clients, well, I meant to, and I was going to, and I intended to, but they come in for an evaluation and they're evaluated on something completely different than they thought they were going to be evaluated on, because your goal changed, but you didn't communicate it. So again, just setting the stage well and making sure that they know what's happening and evaluating your own performance is a huge part of that preparation piece. You want to also consider supervisory reviews. And you're thinking, are you crazy, Holly? Nope. It's great to do a 360. Have them review you on your performance. How well are you leading them? You could also involve other people. You may have someone who works with a number of departments, accounting, for example, or customer service. Go to those supervisors and say, how are they doing? Please give me your feedback so I can gather all I need to give it well. And then, of course, you could get information from regular meetings you have with them, personal notes you've kept, attendance records, goals you've set during that period of time, correspondence you've received and how wonderful they are. If they're people that work with a number of other employees, you could even gather that information from the other employees themselves. Give us some feedback on them. How about performance notes or written reports they've made? You could even use a performance tracker form that says how well they've done consistently, so you just pull that form out and it reminds you. Remember, when you're evaluating a period of time, it's the whole period of time. It's not just the last 2 weeks you remember. If it's a 6-month period, it counts 6 months ago, 5 months ago, 4 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 1 month ago, the whole period of time. So part of that preparing for the appraisal discussion included a lot of information I just gave you, but it also includes preparing yourself for the appraisal discussion. The better prepared you are, the better the discussion is going to be. So ask yourself a few more questions. What contribution is the employee making? Are they bringing something to the table? What contribution should the employee be making? Is there a difference between what they're making and what they should be making? How do you fill that gap? Does the employee know exactly what level of performance is expected? And don't answer with, well, of course they should know. I mean, anybody? No. Did you communicate it? Have you told them? Have you walked through what they need to be doing and how they should be doing it? What training, if any, does the employee need? That's something you might want to add. What are the employee's strengths? I mentioned it early on. I'm going to mention it here again for a moment. What are their strengths? I would love for you to stop the video for a couple of minutes, write down one employee's name, and write down all their strengths. Literally just 2 minutes, maybe one if you don't have that much time to spare, but write down all their strengths. If you can't think of one, why are they still working for you? But if you can't think of 1 or 2 or 10 or 15, write them down, because you need to be reminded of what they are, and you need to remind them in that meeting that you know what their strengths are. How has your performance helped or hindered their achievement of their goals? What action can you take to help them? And again, all these are answers to questions. As you're preparing, you can say, wow, I need to incorporate this into the evaluation itself. How can you create an open environment that facilitates two-way communication? Is there something you're not doing now you should be? Should you be having consistent meetings because they're not willing or comfortable coming in and asking you for time? Maybe you need what we call an employee agenda review meeting, where they come in once a month with their own agenda, they set it, you simply respond to them and give them what they need. But take time to say, okay, preparation is key, whether it's preparing them, whether it's preparing the data and the information, or whether it's preparing myself. Because the bottom line is employees will absolutely know if you've taken the time to prepare. Okay, so the first key element was to prepare for that appraisal discussion. And now this one, number 2, is to conduct the appraisal discussion properly. So be an effective discussion leader. You think, well, that's kind of a no-brainer. Yeah, but how often do we think about it? Folks are coming into this discussion nervous. This is their performance appraisal. They may or may not get a raise. They may or may not get in trouble. They may or may not have great news. So they're coming in nervous about this already. Make sure that you lead that discussion effectively and really well. So first of all, control the environment. Don't allow interruptions if you can. Hold the meeting away from your office if possible, in a conference room, or if there's any place else besides that where people won't come in. Build rapport and warm up a bit by knowing what you're going to say to begin that discussion. Let them know that you know this is a difficult conversation, but to relax, you've got great information for them, you're sure they have great information for you, and you're anxious to work through what that is and work through it together. Put the employee at ease as best you can. Use positive feedback to reduce the defensiveness. So my encouragement is take a few minutes and say to yourself, where do I need to improve in this area? Where do I need to kind of shore up and work a little bit? Is it in controlling the environment because people come in and out of my office all the time? Is it helping them feel at ease because I'm not good at small talk? Whatever it is for you, find out what it is and work on it a little bit because it's worth the time for that specific individual. And then when you begin, state the purpose of the discussion. Review why you're here, some of the advantages of the appraisal. They should already know them, but make sure you go through them again. Tell the employee what information you used to evaluate their performance. Was it from other people? Was it from other departments? Was it from reports? Was it from their notes? Was it from their performance evaluations previously? Was it the job description? Whatever you use, tell them so they have a comfort level around that. And then when you ask for their opinion, have them share their ratings first, before yours, and actively listen. Meaning be tuned in, pay attention, maybe even take notes, but listen. So now we're back at using a good old Blanchard skill called the EAR skill, E-A-R. What do we listen with? EAR, great way to remember it. Explore first. So if they see something you think is absolutely outrageous, don't respond by saying, are you kidding me? You totally came in 3 weeks late with that project. Do you think you did great at this? Control yourself, count to 10 or 2,500, whatever works for you, and ask questions. Help me understand that. Give me your perspective. Are you saying by that rating that on the last 3 to 5 projects you were on time, you were early? Help me understand where you came up with that rating and how I move forward with that. Then acknowledge. So what you're saying is, this is your perspective, or what you heard from the situation we were in a couple of weeks ago that you're highlighting in your evaluation is, this is your view. Whatever it happens to be, acknowledge it, then you can respond. You might ask questions for clarification, even if you felt that's a proper response, or you might simply say, thanks for sharing that, and we'll talk about that when I get to my evaluation portion as well. You always want to make sure you use the EAR skill carefully. Explore, acknowledge, and respond. You might do so in that order, explore, acknowledge, and respond, or you might explore and acknowledge, or explore some more, acknowledge again, and before you ever get to the response piece. But if the employee's having a hard time opening up, make sure you ask open-ended questions. Help them share their opinions about what their perspective is. Closed-ended questions really kind of shut the whole conversation down. So do your best to clarify what they've said, ask them in an open-ended way, and help them be able to share what they're saying from their perspective and in their assessment. Make sure you don't just disagree immediately. Take it in, listen to their assessment. Then it's your turn. Then you present your assessment. You focus on their achievement, you are open, candid, specific, and objective. And that's where the name of this whole process comes from, care and candor. Do it with care. Prepare properly, which is our first element. But secondly, make sure you do it candidly. If they're not performing well, please tell them. If there's a problem with their behavior in the work environment, please communicate it, because that evaluation is going to be a documented piece of their employee file. And when you're calling the consultant or the HR department saying, you know, Susie Smith has really got to go, and all we pull out of that file is this fabulous evaluation of how greatly performed 3 months ago, not going to be to your favor. So remember, separate performance from the person. It's not about this individual, it's about the way they performed. And then build on their strengths. Whenever possible, talk about their strengths. List what they found or you found to be some of their strengths. Ask them to name their own strengths. Share your opinion of the employee's strengths. Show your gratitude for what they're bringing to the table. Recap them, and when you're discussing them, if you need to relate them to specific goals, do that, or performance improvement, do that as well. Once they've given their assessment, now you've given your assessment, now ask for their reaction to your assessment. How do you feel about where I rated you? Some of the ratings are different than how you rated yourself. Help me understand where you are with that. Do you feel okay with it? Do you think my assessment should be different? Help me understand and know more about that. Use the EAR skill. Ask questions, acknowledge before you respond. And then brainstorm solutions for areas that need improvement. We all have some, either training areas or training needs. Brainstorm how to get past that and be able to work together in the next performance appraisal period to get where you need to be. And then come to an agreement on the rating. Now you think, Holly, an agreement? Are you kidding me? The reality is he who has the gold wins on this one, and you've got the authority. So if in fact they say I should be outstanding and you believe they should be rated unsatisfactory, you're going to have to probably pull the authority on it, and that's what you'll have to list. But the reality is, try to come to an agreement first. Discuss with them the opportunity areas for improvement that they may have. Identify again their training and their needs development. Set SMART goals for the next appraisal period. So you've worked through all of this, and now you've heard their opinion. You have given your opinion. You've talked about their opinion of your opinion, and now it's, what do we do going forward? For the next appraisal period, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, what is it we want them to accomplish during that time? So set the SMART goals. You might even need to set a date for a different time to conduct that part of the meeting because you may be out of time at that point. You might want to focus on it clearly, but take time to do it. And when you say SMART goals, you say, what in the world are you talking about, Holly? Specific and measurable. If you can't measure it, you cannot manage it. Motivating. Does it float their boat? Do they want to be a part of it? Attainable. Making sure that they can really attain that goal. It's not so high that it's absolutely a waste of time to try. Relevant to their job, hugely important, and trackable. Can you track the baby steps? Can you know if they're on target? Specific and measurable, motivating, attainable, relevant, and trackable. Those are SMART goals. And again, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. The S and the M of the SMART are written in the goal. The A, the R, and the T are assumed, but make sure that they actually happen there. So now you have prepared for the discussion. You have given and held and led the discussion well, and now it's time to close the meeting. Close it as well as you opened it. Summarize, recap, confirm, ask them to sign the appraisal form, that's important. And if they say, I'm not signing that thing, I don't agree, no problem. Bring somebody in who's another supervisor or HR. Simply let them know that you reviewed it with Susie Smith. I hope Susie Smith isn't watching, by the way. But you reviewed it with Susie Smith, and in that process say, she's refused to sign it, would you please acknowledge I reviewed it with her? And that's all you need to do. Or if they say, I don't agree, they can always sign it with an asterisk next to it saying, this is simply to agree acknowledgement of receipt, not agreement with the evaluation itself. But we want to know for our records purposes that in fact they did see it and you did review it with them. And no matter how it's going at that point, thank them for their participation. Explain what's going to happen next, and always, always, always follow up. Preparation, conducting the meeting, and now follow up. Evaluate your own performance. How well did you do? Was there a point when you really wanted to respond too quickly? Provide feedback with them going forward. So frequent communication so they know how things are going. Without feedback, the employees tend to think their performance is absolutely acceptable because silence equals acceptance. Evil prevails when good men do nothing, right? So when we say nothing, we think it's fine. And the reality is it may not be. Remember, the more immediate the feedback you give them, the more effective it is. The longer you wait, the less effect it has. And then maintain written records because you have another performance appraisal coming up, hopefully in another 3, 6, or 12 months. Keep your records, keep them under lock and key. Make sure you note the positive and the negative. And maybe even conduct interim interviews. But the reality is you want care and candor given to your evaluation, and folks want it for theirs too. So I love this Chinese proverb that I'll end with. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So don't forget to take the first step and then one step at a time until you get through the evaluation process properly. Thanks so much.